Hello everyone. So I got this sketchbook as a gift from a friend. It has 46 pages and I'm not a great artist, but I want to really learn how to draw. So I decided to challenge myself and finish this sketchbook as fast as I can. So welcome to the first page of this sketchbook. You may think I'm drawing a cake. In that case, you are correct, but it's not like any other cake. However, I will leave this for the end so you discover how different my cake is. For now, I'll tell you about the material I'm using. As I said before, I'm not a great artist and I don't draw much. So I don't have a lot of drawing materials. I don't even have colored pencils. But I bought a while ago this cheap pencil set from Shein. I think it works very well. I guess for my beginner skills it works pretty well. So the process of drawing this cake was straightforward. I started with sketching it and then I started with shading the parts that I wanted it to be darker, mainly the areas that resembled cake, while I left the frosting and the cake decoration and the filling all without shading. As I said before, I don't have any experience with drawing, so shading wasn't new to me, but I think it was easy. I just hated how the pencil was transferring all over the place on my hand and on the rest of the paper, and however how much I tried to erase it, it never worked. I also would note that shading the very small area was a bit harder, yet blending all of this shading with the Q-tip was the fun part. And here you can see more and more shading. I think it was the longest part of the whole drawing. And now when I'm looking at it while editing, I think my shading was perfect. I can see some patchy spot, but I did my best with the material that I had. I think I used the darkest color in the set I had. Then I started adding a little bit of details to the cream part or the filling part, so it looks more like creamy filling rather than just two harsh lines. It surprised me how simple the drawing was, but it took a really long time for me and kept going back and forth on the shading and on the sketching and adding details here and there. I was sketching with a very light pencil but shading with a very dark one to make a contrast in the color. And I was mainly focused at the beginning of getting the gist of the cake and making the big picture, but here I started with details and I hope now you understand what I meant by it's not a usual normal cake. So those circles that I drew weren't decorative circles, they weren't meant as a decoration for cake. I intended from the very beginning to make them eyeballs, as you can see. I hope you can recognize that those are eyeballs. I think making the eyeballs was the most fun I had while drawing. They were very easy and straightforward, just making the pupil and then some veins, and they looked horrific in my opinion and I loved them. I drew a bunch of them as a topping for the cake above the icing and some scattered around the cake to fill the space and unify the drawing. I believe that they are what brought my drawing, my sketch to life, and why I enjoy the most about this drawing. It actually took less time than I expected. Eyeballs weren't the only hair thing that I drew. I wanted to add some other details, so I drew this tooth and fingernails and nails. For the last touch of the drawing, I wanted to add like a bloody effect as an icing. So it's not icing, it's blood, where you can see. And I used red ink rather than watercolor or acrylic paint, mainly because I felt that it was a deep red and it looked like blood and I loved the flow of it, but it was harder to use honestly, especially with this brush. It wasn't small enough and I struggled with the small details. The white spots that I'm leaving isn't an accident. I meant them to look like a highlight and to give like this ganache look, a bloody ganache look. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to draw them after coloring everything, so my plan was to leave empty spot, as you can see me sketching here, so it looks like shining or like highlights of how smooth the frosting or the ganache was. Throughout coloring with the red ink, I was scared that it will bleed and ruin the other pages, especially because ink, unlike colors, usually it has a watery texture and the paper end up absorbing it. But I was very glad to see that it didn't transfer and the paper were thick enough.